Computer's kind of slow. We're almost there. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is January 14th. Hello, Tom. How are you? So nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I'm fine.
Great, great. Tom is our dear friend. He worked in FBI for 30 years, and for 5 years, he worked as assistant director of FBI, and he's retired now. Thank you, Tom, for coming to our podcast.
Well,
And
thank you. Thank you for
sure,
having me.
sure, of course, our honor. And we have some good news today. I think it's a good news. I think first thing first, the hearing, confirmation hearing of the Defense Department, the Secretary of Defense Department. So, do you have chance to watch the hearing? What do you feel?
Yes, I watched the first part of it. Yes.
Sure. So, what do you feel? And what's the procedure after the hearing?
Well, the procedure, they have all these senators ask the questions that they want,
Hmm.
and then the committee members will vote on whether to approve uh, Hegseth's nomination. And then no matter what they decide, that
Hmm.
vote then goes to the whole Senate.
Sure.
And even if they say we don't want him, he's no good, the Senate can overrule it and approve him, or
Hmm.
vice versa. They could say he's great, we want him, and the Senate on a whole basically said no, we reject him. So, but generally, what's happened typically in the past is unless there's something really, really serious that comes up,
Hmm.
normally the committee will approve what the president wants. And and in this case, obviously, President Trump wants Pete Hegseth to be Secretary of Defense. So normally they would approve it, and the whole Senate would approve it, and he'd be confirmed. Now
Hmm.
we'll see. It's not over, so there's always some snag that could come up, and then there's always a chance of a Democratic trick that they bring in some mysterious witness and say he did this or he did that, and oh my God, it's a scandal, and we can't have that. So much like you saw in the Kavanaugh hearings when he was supposed to be the
Right.
Supreme Court nominee made by Trump,
Mhm.
and they brought in
Yeah,
women making accusations that happened years ago and they couldn't remember where or when or couldn't prove it, but he did it.
mhm.
And so that caused a lot of aggravation. But ultimately,
Mhm.
the nominee went through, was approved, became a member of the Supreme Court. So in the
Sure.
case of Hegseth, I think right now, most of the people watching this today and watching the lead up to it are of the opinion that he's going to be approved.
Right. I agree. I agree. So thank you so much for tell us the after procedure. But what's the time frame when the committee will vote and when the senator will vote? Within days or
Yeah, it should be within days
okay.
normally.
But not today, right? The committee will not vote for him today.
I don't think so. I think they could, but I don't know. I doubt they will.
Sure.
But then it still has to go to the whole Senate, and
Sure.
so we'll see. Could still take a couple days, and then
Okay.
they're going to be doing, the different committees that have these committee hearings will be
Mhm.
ongoing this week. Now, one of the things his nomination went before you know, Armed Services Committee. Pam Bondi's nomination for Attorney General will go before
Right.
the Judiciary Committee. So
Right.
the different committees that have that particular topic have the hearings. And then again, after each committee has their meetings, it will go to the whole Senate for each person.
Okay. So the final confirmation may go after January 20th.
It may,
Okay.
it
Yeah,
may,
we'll see. We'll see. So after,
especially we'll see that, the controversial ones like Tulsi Gabbard apparently is still
Very.
controversial to a lot of the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, of course, Kash Patel, he's controversial because he knows the inner workings too well.
Mm-hmm.
They bring up these things. What do you know about, like with Hegseth, what do you know about running a big 3 million person organization? You've never had more
Mm-hmm.
than 100 people under
Right.
your responsibility. So they'll
Mm-hmm.
raise that argument. Well, in the case of Kash Patel, they're scared to death of him because he does know.
Mm-hmm.
He's not an outsider. And, he was a prosecutor and personally prosecuted many counterterrorism cases. And then he was at the committee working for Devin Nunes, which he basically put together the investigation proving what the
Mm-hmm.
FBI did in the Russiagate investigation, Russia, Russia, Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And Patel basically made the case of how they did it and who did it, and
Right.
the payment of that being made by Hillary Clinton,
Mm-hmm.
providing false information to the FBI, and then that goes on for 2 or 3 years, including they spied on Kash Patel himself,
Right,
and
right,
then he was at the Pentagon as a an advisor to the Secretary of Defense, so
right.
he knows the Department of Justice. He
Mm-hmm.
knows the evil capabilities of the FBI when they turned it against him. And
Right.
he's observed the lawfare and everything else that's been going on so that's why they would much rather have somebody that fell off a truck outside the Capitol building and they brought in than have somebody like Kash Patel that is so knowledgeable
Mhm.
and has been a victim
Yeah,
of what the FBI did to him.
yeah. So he knows so well. I just curious what kind of excuse they gonna brought up to against him.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm
So
sure they're working very hard to try to figure out something, but I
yeah,
don't think it's going to work. I think the more that they try to do that to him, the more vulnerable they'll be later after he's confirmed if
yeah,
they lie, cheat, or steal
yeah,
to keep him from becoming the director.
yeah. Good point. Good point. Yeah. So what do you tell us what do you think about today's hearing? Well, you said you watched the first half, right?
I've been involved in congressional hearings during my career when I was in the FBI.
Right, right.
And one of the things that the public doesn't know, they have all these cameras and hoopla, and you go in and
Mhm.
you sit there and you testify, and one or more of the senators or members of the House of Representatives, whichever committee it is, they'll be grilling you and they'll give you a hard time. Not all, but some will give you a hard time, and you're not qualified, and you shouldn't have this job, and you're no good. And then when the camera lights go out and they recess, at the end of the meetings, then that very member of Congress or senator from behind the podium, and then you meet them in the thing and they shake hands. Okay, pal, where are we going to lunch? Where do you want to
So,
have dinner today?
so it's totally different face.
Yeah, so that while the cameras are on, they're acting and putting on a show. When the cameras are off, they go back to business as usual,
Mhm.
which is a lot of times no business. But in any event, I've seen that in person where they
Mhm.
have that off-camera relationship, but they have to put on the show for their constituency or whoever. So we'll
Oh,
see.
so
We'll see how
that's
that.
yeah, well, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing this interesting part to our audience. So does that mean that the way that they present themselves on the hearing, it does not affect the way they vote. Is that correct?
Could be, not necessarily.
Okay, it's just a show in some ways.
It's a big show, yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Kabuki theater.
I have to agree with that. And what's the reaction from Pete? Do you think he react very good?
I think
He's
he's doing very well. I think,
okay.
when somebody comes after you, I think the most antagonistic interview was Elizabeth Warren,
Oh,
and she does that to everybody that's, a conservative. And anyway, I think he held his own very well. He did. The key to that is actually the same as if you're testifying in a court trial. and they
Right.
go after you and make all these accusations, do not show anger or
Hmm.
get upset or lose your cool. Stay calm, stay poised,
Hmm.
hold your own, and you can argue back and forth, but very professionally only.
Right.
And so far, watching his performance today, I think he did very well.
Good, good. That's good to hear. Because I saw some part of it, about 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. One of the women, like Congresswoman, no Congresswoman, Senator, she's a lady. I don't know which state she's from, but she is so aggressive. It's like arguing and then just look at her, the words and the way she said, it's just like she wants to hit him. So I think it's that out of control. It is the part of the show.
Part of the show, probably.
Okay. All
You
right.
never know positively, but
Right.
someone like Pete would go into all these meetings that he's had with senators along the way in the last week or two.
Hmm.
He would be getting coached from some of them. If he hasn't testified before, or if they're not sure,
Hmm.
they're going to give him advice. Don't do this, don't do that. So it's much like, if you watched a heavyweight boxing
Right.
match and
Uh-huh.
the trainer is in the corridor saying, do this and don't do that, and giving advice on how to handle yourself under that kind of pressure. And
Hmm.
again, part of it is that if he did lose his cool, if
Hmm.
he couldn't maintain his poise and composure and professionalism, then
Hmm.
that would be a clue for some senators that maybe are undecided or maybe middle of the road, saying, maybe he's not ready for prime time.
Right.
Now, you
Right.
would not expect it because he's had all of this experience now
Hmm.
as a co-anchor on the weekend shows on Fox News.
Hmm.
He's filmed specials that have shown documentaries, that type of thing.
Hmm.
So he's someone that is very familiar with expressing himself,
Hmm.
being able to take an interview, be professional, answer these questions,
Hmm.
and that's what I would expect. And I think that they're going to watch him and realize he knows what he's doing. So
Hmm.
he's not, if he doesn't get rattled by them, he's not going to get rattled by, the Secretary of War from Japan or China or Russia or any other country. That he
Hmm.
should be have enough poise and composure and professionalism to
Hmm.
handle himself under pressure.
Right. It's a test of grace under pressure. He
Right.
has to show the attitude, which he's doing pretty good today.
Yeah, I think he did very well.
Great, great. It's a good news. I think lots of our audience, I think not 100%, but 95% of our audience are for him, wants him to get the position. And what do you think about the other nominees like Kash Patel, like the AD, and then what do you
I
expect?
think part of what will be in store for the future nominees is
Uh-huh.
kind of how this one is the first one here
Okay.
go after Hegseth, and there were some that maybe thought he had vulnerability from
Yeah.
incidents in his past and all that. So if he gets through this okay, then I think that would it would bode well for the other candidates that are going to be considered.
Okay.
So when they have the hearings for Pam Bondi to be Attorney General,
Right.
that should go. She should be very
Easy.
easily supported, let's say,
Right.
having done a great Attorney General job in Florida. So they're
Hmm.
not going to be able to say to her, well, you don't know anything about how justice works or prosecutions work or
Yeah.
dealing with these issues. Florida is in great shape in
Right.
large part because of her leadership running
Mhm.
their Department of
Right.
Justice in Florida. And I
Right.
think that when it goes down the line, Kash Patel is the one that they're going to go after, I think, the hardest
Yeah.
because they're scared of him. That's the problem. The
Yeah.
problem that Kash Patel has is that he's not stupid and he's not inexperienced and he's not any of he's all of those. He's
Yeah.
very experienced, very intelligent, very articulate, and they're
Hmm.
going to look at that, his background and all that, and go, we
How can we?
better be careful with him.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we are very expected to see the final result. But as you said, I personally I do have confidence for these people.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
when you look at like Pete Hegseth, when you have all of the Navy SEALs support him,
Yeah.
all of the people in special forces, all of the actual war fighters on the ground
Right.
backing him up, that's a
Right.
big deal.
Right.
That's an important thing
Mm-hmm.
that that they're going to back him up.
Mm-hmm.
So just like when Trump during the campaign, when all of the police associations
Right.
supported him, that
Uh-huh.
was the big deal. When he's
Right.
running on a law and order, justice, America First platform,
Mm-hmm.
then when all of the groups that are part of that
Mm-hmm.
bureaucracy, if you will,
Yeah.
were on his side, that he should
Mhm.
win, that he should get the position. And
Yeah.
I think that that'll be a big factor with Cash Patel. You have some of the people right now, senior leadership, past and present of the FBI,
Mhm.
that are part of the problem, I think, of the FBI. They don't want Cash Patel. So they're going to be trying to unload on him.
Mhm.
And I think that many of them probably realize, he's pretty smart.
Mhm.
And the hope would be that during the hearings, uh, Cash Patel will be able to handle himself very well during that.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting to see. And one saying that I saw today, it's very interesting to me, is one of the senator asked Pete what kind of weapon you use in certain situation and how can you fix it if something wrong, how can you fix it? It's a very technique question. Unless someone are really in the battlefield, really in the war, they don't know. And I saw Pete just give a very quick, clear, and right answer, and the senator said, okay, you got my vote.
Right.
And yeah, just like you said, lots of Navy SEAL, they went to Washington, D.C. yesterday. They have a big conference
Right. Right.
yesterday. It's very strong support. Yeah. So,
Especially because, they're strongly supported by the public. They know the SEALs are probably the most elite of the special forces. And each, the Army has Green Beret and
mhm,
the other entities have their version of special forces. But the Navy SEALs, during the time I was in Iraq as the FBI's commander, right after the invasion in 2003,
mhm,
we had Navy SEALs there that were,
mhm,
that was not going to be a naval battle in Iraq. It was a land war.
mhm,
But the skills that they learned in the training they go through, you don't have to be in the water to exercise those skills. You can do it on land. You can do the tactics that are used and all of that. So they were widely used in Iraq, and and they were very, very competent, very capable.
right. Well, this is a good news for today for the hearing. The first hearing, just like you said, is lead by example. So this is a good start. And on the other hand, we have someone will say goodbye to his position, Christopher Wray. He actually got an interview on Sunday with 60 Minutes, and he talked about what he thought about FBI, and he gave defense on some of the wrongdoing, in our opinion, um, about why they're doing so like Mar-a-Lago, right? And he just said that every procedure, everything we have done in Mar-a-Lago with Trump is correct, is necessary, and there's nothing to be criticized of our action. What do you think about his
I
saying?
think there's a lot to be criticized. I had been a SWAT member
Mhm,
when I was in Chicago, a SWAT commander.
mhm.
Later, as an assistant in charge of San Francisco, I was on the tactical board, I guess, of the FBI, the top leaders that were at the Olympics in Atlanta in '96,
So
and the
important job.
procedures.
Um,
Pardon?
so many important jobs.
Oh, thank
Good
you.
for you, and thank you so much.
One
Good.
of the
Yeah.
one of the interesting things of the idea of a SWAT team, special weapons and tactics,
Mhm,
is that through the extreme professionalism, extreme training,
mhm,
that you're very disciplined. you're less likely to accidentally shoot somebody or get excited and make a mistake and all of that. And
Mhm.
that's very, very important. And we used SWAT teams very selectively. And
Mhm.
I was on the team in Chicago that, almost 10 years I did in the Chicago office. And then, as I said, later in charge of the team in San Francisco. And
Mhm.
and then on the board, on the tactical leadership group in Atlanta. And one of the things that, we're very, very reluctant to use a SWAT team for what's basically routine. If you have a fugitive and you think they're in the house and, there's no reason to believe they're going to be a special threat or that they're more heavily armed than necessary, then you get a couple of agents together and say, okay, let's go do this arrest. Let's go do this search. And you go do it. And so the times that you call out a team are to be very special situations.
Mhm.
Now, many of us that were SWAT leaders were highly critical when they used the FBI at Roger Stone's house.
Right.
And here's a guy that was being charged with a white collar technical crime, uh, by Congress. And they sent a SWAT team. They had boats, planes, you name it, and then the armed shoulder weapon agents at his residential door. And then they had tipped off CNN to have a camera crew on the street filming this. And it was absurd. And I was retired from the Bureau at the time and was a CNN analyst, but many many of my colleagues that had been SWAT leaders or had been heads of offices, division heads, we talked about this afterward and said this was absolutely absurd to have done that. To use a SWAT team with a non where you had no specific threat, none of this, he's armed and dangerous and he's going
Right.
to
Right.
fight you
Right.
to the death and you're not going to take me alive and all that stuff. None of that. And
Mhm.
so, and they send that SWAT team there for a big show of force. And then they've done that in a couple situations. I remember a father where they go to his home and his children are having breakfast in the
Right.
house, and they
I
send a team
remember
like
that.
that armed with shoulder weapons to the door where he was a nonviolent offender. So we had many of those situations under Christopher Wray. They had no business deploying a SWAT team. And
Mhm.
then Mar-a-Lago is another one. And I've talked to some people that were familiar with the decision making that
Mhm.
said the FBI agents, street
Mhm.
agents, and SWAT team argued against using the SWAT team in that situation to conduct the raid on Mar-a-Lago. And they were
Oh.
overruled by Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland. No, they wanted that. And then, they basically, what I saw when they showed the camera coverage of that was unprofessional conduct. What they were looking for, they knew was there. Trump was already dealing with the Archives Committee. They knew what he had and where he had it, and were well aware of it. He wasn't under any orders at that point to turn it in, and you've got to give it back right now, because they
Mhm.
have that argument with each presidency, Obama and Clinton, the others, same thing. But in that case, when they showed, for example, pictures of the raid where all of these FBI file covers that had top secret were
Mhm.
scattered all over the floor in one of the rooms. And everybody who's anybody that knows Trump knows that he's a neat freak, he's a germaphobe, that
Mhm.
everything had to be in its place, and he would never have just thrown these files all
Right.
over. And
Right.
when I saw the file jackets that had the red, top secret on the outer jacket, I knew that was a setup. I
Mhm.
knew that in that raid, they spread those file, probably empty folders
Mhm.
around and then to embarrass Trump, which they did. That goes out, and people think, look at that. Look at how they just, Trump just had this stuff laying all over the place. No, he didn't. The people doing the search spread that stuff around. And then, of course, you find out what they're looking for are documents that they already knew what he had. And then, to allow themselves then to be portrayed as invaders and unprofessional, including to this day, you still hear they went into Melania Trump's bedroom and
Right.
went through her drawers. No, 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 no. You don't do that. And so everything about that raid was completely unnecessary,
Mhm.
unprofessional, unprovoked, and improper, I thought, than many of my fellow colleagues that had been SWAT team commanders, SWAT team leaders,
Mhm.
division heads, ran field offices or headquarters divisions.
Mhm.
Many of us looked at that and said that was completely improper to do that.
Mhm.
And now where are all those documents that he wasn't supposed to? Where's that whole case today? You know,
Yep.
it's
Yeah,
gone.
good question. That's a
It's
good
gone.
question.
But the reputation of FBI agents going through, the former first lady's underwear drawer, for example, that stays forever. That stain of having conducted themselves in that manner, looking for things that were not going to be hidden that they didn't already know he had. They knew everything he had and where it was at. So that whole thing, I just thought was ludicrous and a stain on the FBI's reputation for being fair, for being professional, for being thorough. Now, we're not asking agents to conduct a search and get blown up or
Mhm.
killed in the process because it's dangerous going into a cartel group and
Right.
arrest, violent criminals. We're not
Mhm.
asking them to do that.
Mhm.
But when you're going after white collar criminals with no violent background, no
Mhm.
reputation for resisting arrest or
Right.
armed resistance or any of that, and you
Right.
conduct yourself that way, which brings disrespect on the Bureau, to
Mhm.
me, that's not tolerable. And the people that allowed that to happen,
Right.
Christopher Wray,
Mhm.
Merrick Garland, have yet to be held accountable for the way that was conducted because that's up to them. Now,
Yeah.
normally, the head of a field division would make the decision on whether to deploy their SWAT team. In this
Mhm.
case, that team, they didn't even let the Miami division have the opportunity to say yes or no. They sent the SWAT team down from Washington field office and flew
That-
them down to Miami's territory to conduct that operation.
Sure.
And and it
Do
was wrong. It was wrong that they did it. And politically, they've paid the price for
sure.
having done it that way.
Sure. So, is do they need to tell Miami office or they do not have to? Is that any requirement
Oh,
that?
if the director of the FBI, with the Attorney General's approval, says we're sending the people from Washington field office, whether it's the hostage rescue team or the
Mhm.
actual local SWAT team in Washington, and they're
Mhm.
going to fly down there in your territory and conduct this operation.
Mhm.
And then any political fallout's going to fall on you. And if you're the boss in Miami,
Right.
and wherever your Miami agents go after that to do interviews, conduct investigation, they're going to
Mhm.
be considered responsible. The public isn't going to know the nuance between this
Right.
team was specially sent down there to
Right.
overrule the local
Right.
FBI boss. None of that's going to be readily apparent to anybody.
Right. 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 So they should inform a Miami office. So that's what they
Oh,
did
they
not.
informed them, we're coming down in your territory. Get the hell out of our way. So they
Oh,
were informed.
okay. That's the way they tell. Okay. Not a good way. So I have a question regarding the misconduct. At least this is a misconduct action. So normally, so situation like this, FBI will have some way to deal with. So they're going to punish someone, or what they're going to do? Something like this happened. It's a misconduct
Well,
leading
it
the.
depends if it, in this case, well, right now, or at the time, be hard to prove misconduct. They're conducting a search, and how do they know that it was the FBI that spread those files around to look bad and then take pictures, take photographs at the site? Or that's how Trump was. He was just sloppy and throws stuff around and all of that. And they knew at the time it wasn't true because they'd already been in there. The archives people had already been in the house,
Yeah.
and Trump was cooperating. So I think that's the
Okay.
problem here is that they knew that the people on the search team did it.
I see. I see. So this is maybe not a misconduct. It's just purely lies to show
Yeah,
the public. So who knows, right? This is a big question mark, at least.
yeah, it's a question mark, as many of the operations like that were. The other big question mark, and I talked about this many times, was in January, more than a year ago, in January, when the memo comes out that the Richmond field office was going to investigate the FBI for the Catholic, or investigate the Catholic Church, I should say,
Oh,
for
uh-huh.
conducting Mass in Latin.
Oh, right,
Now,
right.
now I had been raised Catholic, and as a young lad, in the Chicago suburbs,
Mm-hmm.
my first 4 years of school was at a Catholic school, Catholic church,
Mm-hmm.
and so we went to Mass every day before school. We had to go in early and then go to church. And the masses, you had altar boys that helped the priest and give communion and all of the activity normally associated with conducting a mass.
Right.
And in those days, when I was young like that in the 50s, all the masses were in Latin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then in the mid 60s, the Catholic Church thought, we're losing membership around the world. We have 2 billion and we want to keep it. And decided that they had they called them ecumenical councils at
Mm-hmm.
the Vatican. And the purpose was this was like an internal review process to see if there were some changes that be made. And one of the changes that this council advised the Pope is that the churches all around the world should be able to conduct some masses in their home country language.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a country speaking French or German or Spanish or whatever it might be, Chinese, Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
that do some of the masses in Latin and then do some of the masses in the language of that country. And
Mm-hmm.
that might help people if they go to the church and they hear the language of their own country, they might be more inclined to join and participate.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in the mid 1960s. Well, then what happens is over the years, people get to meet, old people like me
Mm-hmm.
and realize that, when I was a young boy, I really liked it when we did the mass in Latin because it sounds kind of Italian-like, and it's a beautiful language, especially when you don't know what they're saying. You have to assume it's very holy, it's very religious. Oh, it's very special. If you heard the words, you might think, well, that's stupid. But when you hear it in in Latin and you don't speak Latin, perfect. So now they have these rulings and say, people that are older that belong to that church might like to be able to decide if the church on Sunday morning has 5 masses,
Mm-hmm.
they might like having 1 or 2 in Latin that they could go to those instead of the
Sure.
whatever it might be. So
Sure.
now this memo goes out that the church is holding some of these masses in Latin. And right away, the accusation is that if you want to go to church and celebrate the Mass in Latin, you must be a domestic terrorist. That's not right. You should be doing it in English or whatever, whatever else.
Where
And
this comes from? Where this comes from? How that?
well, okay,
Yeah.
good question. That's why you have an internal investigation. So, so when this comes out publicly, Christopher Wray, he's in public, in testimony. I know he testified before Jordan and his committee in the House, and he was shocked and outraged and oh, we're gonna get to the bottom of this and answer the question you just asked. Very important question. We've got to find out how this happened.
Mm-hmm.
So an internal investigation is ordered.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was coming up the chain in my career as a young executive, um, I had been an inspector, for a full-time inspector for 1 full year,
Mm-hmm.
where we conducted every field office and headquarters division of the FBI goes under inspection once every 3 years, sometimes 4 years, depending, but generally every 3 years. And you send a team of the inspector and assistant inspectors to that division, pour through every file, every investigation, interview every employee, and make sure that that office is doing what it's supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
complying with the rules and regulations as written,
Mm-hmm.
and effective and efficient, that the cases they're doing are being properly conducted, properly run, and they have statistical accomplishments to prove it. And then you also go to all of the judges and police chiefs and everybody in that territory and interview them about their relationship with the FBI, and in their opinion, is the FBI doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Right.
That's every division.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in addition to that, as an inspector, you have times when an accusation comes up of wrongdoing
Mm-hmm.
within a division, headquarters, or field.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, an inspector is assigned, and depending on how involved the investigation, they would have assistant inspectors assigned to the inspector to go with that person to that division and conduct an internal investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those investigations, depending on just the accusations and how serious or how much public attention it's getting,
Mm-hmm.
they don't take that long. So you go into a division. Richmond's a relatively small division. I think it's like 50 agents and
Oh,
you know
that's pretty small.
75 or 100
Mm-hmm.
analysts and support people. But the inspector would go in there, and
Mm-hmm.
she might have 5, 10, 15 assistant inspectors
Mm-hmm.
travel to that division and get to the bottom of what happened and then document it and report. That type of investigation, and I said at the time on podcasts, having done these, that would normally take a week or two maximum. You'd be under pressure to get that done. And
Mm-hmm.
so in this case, Christopher Wray is testifying in, I think, June or July before one of the committees.
Mm-hmm.
And the investigation had theoretically started in January, February, when the Richmond memo was made public. So now you've had all these months, and they ask Ray, well, how's it going? And have you finished it and everything? And his usual answer, the investigation's still going on and we're not done. And I remember Jordan asking him, when do you expect to be done? And he
Yeah.
was asking him, I think around June.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray says, well, we hope by the end of the year, I'm sorry, by the
And
end of summer, by the
uh-oh.
end of the summer,
Okay.
we're going to be done. And then we'll let you know and we'll tell everybody the results of our investigation. Well, the end of summer comes and goes. The autumn comes and goes. The winter comes and goes. And to this day, I don't know if any results ever came out. I haven't heard any of what they find. And if somebody was guilty of wrongdoing, the head of the office would typically be the one to pay the price, but the head legal advisor or other people in the division that would have been responsible for writing that memo that went out and then putting it out, that Ray would then return to Congress and say, here's what we found. The special agent in charge, he improperly authorized that document. He signed it out, or the principal legal advisor of the office signed it out. These are the people responsible for that becoming public, and they're going to be disciplined. Now, as I said, start to finish, that whole investigation should have been, and the report issued and the results issued within a month, max. 2, 3 weeks, but I'll give them a month. Now, 9, 6, 9, 8, 8 or 9 months later, he's testifying, well, we're not done yet, but we're going to be. And now, I think he hoped it would go away once everybody stopped talking about it, or they would have other controversies in the FBI to talk about. And so they could forget that one. Other
Mm-hmm.
things have come up. And and so at the time, when Ray said we're not, that it's going to take until the end of summer and maybe we'll be done and all that. And I spoke up at the time on podcasts saying he's untruthful.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that long. And I know because I was an inspector and I did those kind of investigations, start to finish, 2, 3 weeks, maybe 4. That's it. So don't say it's going to take 10 weeks or 10 months and we're not going to be, and even then we're not done yet. No, no, no. So I knew, as usual, he's mischaracterizing the time frame necessary to conduct that kind of investigation. And we've heard that start to finish with him. The Hunter Biden laptop, how long did that take? Years. Those cases don't take years, especially when it's as high profile as that one became. When they become a national news item, then it has to be resolved even faster, and that becomes top priority. And the FBI is in a position to send one inspector and one assistant inspector, or 10 inspectors and 50 assistants. They can send whatever they need to that division to get this thing accomplished within a certain time frame.
Right.
And it seems like invariably his answers, Christopher Wray's answers are always, that's an ongoing, can't talk about it. It's an ongoing investigation. Three,
That's it.
4 years, a laptop, 3, 4 years? No, no, it's
It's
not an ongoing investigation. It should have been done, before it even became public. It shouldn't have taken
yeah,
the liars from the CIA who said 51 people who said, "Oh, that has all the earmarks of Russian." It had none of the earmarks,
yeah.
none of them. So that was a lie by them.
So
And
sounds to me, Christopher Wray as a director of FBI, he's not there for invest something. He's there to cover up something. He's doing
well,
more.
that's how he ends up being used to cover up embarrassment and everything. At
Right.
the time when I was in the bureau and I hit mandatory retirement in 2008,
Hmm.
um, when I reached 57 years old, that's it, you're out. And so at that time, to the public's, I guess, support of the Bureau or approval of the FBI at the time was somewhere in the range of 70%, 75% approval of
Pretty high.
how the FBI did its job, did its work, and all of that. Now, today, I think it's under 50%, but it's very low. Now, one of the things when we did an inspection, as I mentioned, being an inspector, having spent a whole year full time and then part of the next year doing special investigations, um, you know, we went in there and one of the things we graded the head of the office on was effectiveness of that person's leadership in the community. If the
Hmm.
reputation, and then we had the stats from the previous investigation. And during that investigation, the public in that territory, or the chiefs of police, the judges, other leaders, mayors, they gave the FBI 70, 80, 90% approval ratings.
Hmm.
Now, all of a sudden, you go into the division 3 years later, and the public, the ratings are less than 50%. And if that happened and the approval of the Bureau in that territory had gone down significantly, the leader was out. That inspection was career threatening, and the
Hmm.
person would be removed, and it was because ineffective or inefficient or both. That's all it took.
Hmm.
They were not running the division in a manner that received public support,
Hmm.
and that they're out of a job, removed from that position, demoted, whatever, depending on what came up. It was serious. And so normally as inspectors, when we went into a division to do a regular every 3 or 4 year inspection of that office, the top leadership of that office was really, really apprehensive because they knew that 2 or 3 weeks later, when we finish, they might be finished and
Right.
removed.
Hmm.
And so it was very, very serious business to do an inspection. Now,
Hmm.
the other branches of the government are supposed to inspect divisions within other agencies, whether it's Health and Human Services or whatever it might be. The FBI was exempted from that because most of the investigations are classified. There's so much classified material it has to be reviewed. So the idea was the FBI will do its own internal inspections, internal investigations. And as a result of that, we were very, very, very strict on ourselves, more strict than if an outside agency, GAO, or somebody came in. We did it to ourselves. And, the internal joke at the time is that we eat our young. That's how that's how serious these inspections go.
Oh.
And if you're the head of a division, when that inspection starts,
Mhm.
you might not be in charge of that division when it's over. If things come up, you might not have been aware of it. Maybe you're a lax leader or you're not, whatever it might be, it's serious business. And so for Ray to say, with the embarrassment that comes out, with the idea that the FBI could be somehow discriminatory against the Catholic Church in Richmond, that the idea of that would be serious business. So an inspector, a team of inspectors going into that division to find out what happened, that would be career threatening. And
Hmm.
instead, we've heard nothing to this day that I know of here's how that came out. Or here's this, lowly agent wrote this or analyst wrote this report and a supervisor not paying attention. Oh yeah, yeah, I'll sign that, put it out. And then all of a sudden it blows up. And those are things that the supervisor or the assistant special agent in charge or the special agent in charge should realize they need to be aware of how sensitive an issue might become. And that's
Hmm.
part of what they're supposed to know. Otherwise, they're not qualified to do their job if they're not aware that that's going to blow up in their face.
Hmm. Also, things like FBI have the a system to do this kind of investigation internally.
Absolutely. The internal,
Right,
it's assigned within the inspection division.
right.
And part of that division is responsible for the routine inspections of every field office and headquarters division. That's
Hmm.
part of the division. The other part of the division is for internal investigations when you have accusations of either misconduct
Right.
or bad management or some other issue comes up that needs to be investigated.
Mhm.
Uh, so that would all be part of that division. Then
Right.
parts of the division, if there's a shooting somewhere, that an FBI agent involved in a shooting somewhere in the country, then inspectors are sent to investigate that. So that's
Mhm.
part of that, the type of inspections that would be done.
Right,
So there's a
right,
number of those kind of issues of where inspectors are dispatched, if you will, to look into something.
right. So it sounds to me, Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland actually had put their own agenda over the FBI procedure, which worked
Absolutely.
years, and then this is wrong. This is wrong. So to me, Christopher Wray is just a person that not trustworthy. Not trustworthy. He's always has some excuse and sometimes big lies. And then
Yeah, I know.
um
And every time, excuse me, every time he did a press conference,
mhm.
or made a public statement, I didn't want to have to go on a podcast or go on an on-air interview on one of the networks and say he's a liar. I would say, well, he's not forthcoming, you know,
Not trust.
which is bureaucrat talk for he's a liar.
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
this Richmond, and that was something that I could say. Not a lot of these things. I've been out of the FBI 20 some years, so I can't say every single thing he said was a lie from personal knowledge. But
Mhm.
when he talked about the inspecting the Richmond division for that Catholic Church issue,
Right.
I did inspections. I was an inspector. Those are
Mhm,
the kind of things that I got assigned to do and to
mhm.
report on and file the report back to headquarters. So that when he says it's going to take 10 months, well, I knew right there that's a lie. Doesn't
Mhm.
take 10 months. Should
Right,
not have taken 10 days.
right,
Should
right,
not have.
right.
And
Yeah.
then when they go in and they find that somebody irresponsibly put out that statement or said something that shouldn't have gone out, then that should include discipline then.
Right.
That person could be suspended for a day or two or a week or
Mhm.
removed from the position.
Yeah.
So if you have the boss of the office is so insensitive that he allows some statement like that, a report to go out that shouldn't have,
Mhm.
or the principal legal advisor, the head lawyer of that office, allows it to go out, or
Right,
someone at headquarters reviewed it and approved it and said, oh, yeah, put that out, no problem,
right.
then somewhere along the line, that memo should not have been published, should not have gone public, and
Mhm.
whoever is responsible for that should have been disciplined.
Right, right. So, in one word, on almost 1 year, people still don't know what's going on in that case. No idea. And
Nope.
And Christopher Wray also mentioned in that interview, 60 Minutes, he said China is the most dangerous, most threatened to the US. And he also mentioned that the Chinese people or Chinese or people or CCP, they have the force to get into our infrastructure. That means they can shut down our power station. They can shut down our water distribution center.
Yeah.
Is this true? Do you believe it? Or he is just like,
Sure, it's possible because every system is now computerized. So
mhm.
whether it's the water pumping, in your local community, or the electric grid,
Yeah, he's that.
or aviation, or
Mhm.
the railroads, or you name it, those are all controlled by computers. And anything controlled by computers can be controlled by people that shouldn't be controlling those computers, which means that Chinese would have the expertise to penetrate the grid, the power grid, the water pump. All of those systems can be penetrated.
Mhm.
And, that may be what's happened. Now, right now, one of the interesting things is who is responsible for the drones that are flying all over. And
Yeah.
now, within the last week, you have like Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene this week saying she just flew back into Washington, D.C., and the pilot said we're being rerouted, more circuitous routing because of drones flying over the White House.
Oh,
So, what's happened with that? What's happened with all these accusations of these drones? And we don't know. Now, Trump has said that one day after he takes the oath of office, so theoretically, January 21st, he's going to make a statement about how this is happening, who's
right.
responsible for it. But up
Right.
till now, he's been saying somebody knows, and they're not saying.
Mhm.
And, we just have right now, we have, the government is being run absentee landlord, whether it's Biden. Where's the
Mhm.
vice president been? She's still getting paid to be vice president. Where's she? Where's Biden? Where's any of them right now,
Mhm.
today? So when you have the accusation that there's drones flying over the White House, illegally flying over the Capitol,
Right.
and the inauguration is next week,
Yep.
it's pretty serious business because the larger of these drones can carry weapons, they can carry chemicals, gas, radioactive material. They can be lethal to
Right.
many people.
Yep.
And in this case, if you're going to have 1 million people in the mall in
Mhm.
downtown Washington next week, and in the meantime, flying into Washington, taking all the hotels in Washington, coming in by plane, train, bus, car, all of the vulnerabilities of that, what's going on?
Yeah.
No public statement has been made.
Yep.
Uh, who's responsible for these drones? Now, if they're U.S. military drones, which I kind of believe they are, that they're probably ours,
Mhm.
hopefully ours,
Mhm.
then put the people's mind at ease that that's okay. They're ours and they're scoping the area to be in defensive positions to take out other drones that may come in or other remote control devices or whatever it might be. But we don't know. We don't have any assurances other
Right.
than the people that go in front of the camera,
Mhm.
whether it's, John Kirby or some of the other
Mhm.
spokespersons that come out, who, for the most part, we don't believe.
Yep.
And they've earned the reputation of not being honest in these situations.
Mhm.
So right now, that's that's why so many people are so nervous right
Yep.
this minute of what's going to happen, what is coming in the week ahead. And many Secret Service, former Secret Service, watching guys like Bongino that has a podcast that's extremely popular after his years of service in the Secret Service, basically saying this is dangerous. Trump and everybody at that inauguration next week is going to be very vulnerable.
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of ways that they could use drones or other methods to do an attack on him or on the Capitol or anywhere else, White House. So, we don't know. And many of us are kind of, like we were when they counted the electoral results on January 6th. And it's almost like what's going to happen today? Can we get through today, tomorrow, next week,
Right.
and get him sworn in?
Mhm.
And some people have advocated, security experts have advocated, we'll move the inauguration indoors.
Mhm.
Well, you have 1 million people that expect to be able to see it outdoors. So there's a lot of issues at stake with that.
Right.
Um, and what his schedule and where he's going to be. It's going to be out in front, taking the oath from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And then when that's done, he goes into a room in the Capitol and possibly then he could be signing executive orders, maybe, maybe not. Then they have the motorcade that goes from the Capitol to back to the White House. And then he has more signings that he can do in the White House. So he'll be vulnerable at the stage or at the podium on the Capitol steps. He'll be vulnerable when they have the motorcade going down Pennsylvania Avenue to go back to the White House. Then the White House, who knows how vulnerable he could be there. So you have a series of checkpoints
Mhm.
that he would be vulnerable.
Mhm.
And we've had no reason to have confidence in the Secret Service in the last year
Right.
with all of the mistakes and issues that they've overlooked and the failures on their part. And his life is in their hands.
Exactly, exactly, Tom. Actually, this is the last question I'd like to discuss with you, and you already say something about it. It's the security for the inauguration in January 20th. I realize that next week when we have our podcast is the first one. So I saw some information or news that Secret Service said they are prepared for the security of that day, so people can just relaxing and just enjoy. But still, I can't, I can't
No,
because
me either. And there have been many issues over the years demonstrating where people had a lack of confidence in the Secret Service.
Mhm,
Primary example would be that during President John F. Kennedy's presidency,
mhm,
Bobby Kennedy, his attorney general, proposed to Congress that the
mhm,
responsibility for protecting the president should be switched from Secret Service to the FBI.
mhm,
And Secret Service fought that. Oh, we're the experts. We know all about it. And it was rejected. So the Secret Service kept responsibility for protecting President Kennedy, and they've
mhm.
had it since. So we've had different instances that have happened that have created an even greater lack of confidence in the
Mhm.
Secret Service. And you
Mhm.
can go back to the shooting of President Trump or President nominee Trump in
Right.
Butler, Pennsylvania, to other events where it has not inspired confidence in the public
Mhm.
or others
Mhm.
that they're in a position to protect as well as they should be. And
Right.
so, we'll see. They still have the responsibility. Now, the the um, the idea of protecting the inauguration, the president, all of the attendees and the dignitaries, you have the chief judges of the Supreme Court there, all of that, because of that scrutiny, it's going to be much harder for incompetent Secret Service
Yep.
bosses to ruin it, basically, or to be inept or incompetent, because they're going to be under such intense
Mhm.
scrutiny, start to
Mhm.
finish, that I think that the Secret Service protection should be in place. But there's not every situation. So if there's an attack on the Capitol Mall, whether it's by drone, whatever else it might be, that could be overwhelming for the Secret Service or anybody else, our military or anyone else
Agree.
to protect him from.
Agree.
But
Agree.
we'll see.
Yeah. Cross our finger. And up today, me and I believe lots of people will still think that the Pennsylvania um, assassination attempt that Trump survived from that is a miracle. It's a miracle. It's up to the God. And I just really wish God still continually bless the American, bless Trump and everybody around
Since you
him.
brought that up, another example of FBI Director Christopher Wray being untruthful. If you remember after the shooting, I think he was trying to claim it was some kind of shrapnel or some other. He did not want to say a bullet, you know,
Yeah.
wounded his ear
Mhm.
that close to his brain.
Right.
And he wouldn't say it. Oh no, that was shrapnel, a ricochet from something else. It's like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So,
I,
so that's
I
part of the problem. You hate to characterize so many issues as failures of the Democratic Party or their lack of leadership. And as if on cue, what do we have in California? What do we have in Los Angeles? From the governor, from Mayor Bass, from the LBGTQ fire chiefs and everybody else that's there.
Mhm.
um, unbelievable mismanagement of fire safety and water management and deployment of personnel, taking resources away from the fire department, taking resources away from the other agencies responsible, like clearing the brush. Oh no, no, we don't need to do. You have all of these people, and it's interesting is that the people of the Palisades and Malibu, 80% were voted Democrat.
Big
So
time.
okay, you got your wish. You wanted these incompetent people because they're woke. You got them, and now
Yeah.
you don't have a house anymore,
Yeah.
and you don't have any insurance for that house. And
Yeah.
but your Democratic president gave you $770 cash, so you're all set. Your $15 million house is burnt to the ground, but now you've got $700 in cash.
Yeah, talking about $770 per person. It's just the beginning of some payment, or it's just a one-time payment. That's it.
Yeah, and for that, one trip to Starbucks might wipe that out. So, yeah, what
It's
good's that going to do?
ridiculous. I actually went there Saturday, and I just bought some water and some food and something, just want to donate to the people there, and it looked like a war zone. It's so sad, and you cannot believe it. You cannot believe it. It's just like a nuclear weapon just being used. The whole area. Yeah, you just cannot imagine. It's really sad. It's really sad to see that. The beautiful state, right now it's just like a third world war zone. And that's it. I do believe that rebuild the processing will be very, very long. For some place or for most of the place, they cannot go back to what they were before. Never.
Right.
It's just it's just gone. So yeah, I have some people just say hi and thank you so much for sharing the information. And hey, Tom and Cheyenne. Hi, Tom. Wish Hagseth a successful confirmation in the Senate in advance. Wish success get confirmed smoothly. Will Christopher Ray get punished for all the evil thing he did? I care about this more. We have people just want to see some
No,
bad.
he won't. He won't.
Oh, that's sad.
My prediction, he won't.
Because someone protect him or because the system protect him.
Well, the people that, did wrongdoing in the administration over the last 4 years, long line of people, including Ray, Merrick Garland, many others. So I don't think that and in the past, they keep saying, well, Trump's going to get revenge or he's going to go after him or he's going to do that. Um, I think in anything, they'll rely on Cash Patel internally to try to put things back together within the FBI. So I don't know. And the thing, for like I was just talking about Christopher Wray, and he said they're going to solve the Richmond memo on the Catholic Church, and it'll take all summer or whatever. Well, how do you prove that he should have known it could be done in 2 weeks, but he was putting it out, the inefficiency of the Bureau under his management, oh yeah, it would take all summer. So so in a way, he wasn't lying about what the investigation is going to require,
Right,
but
right,
that's
right.
under him. Any
Mhm.
other FBI director, and I was an assistant director under Mueller,
Mhm.
man, you would if you got sent to Richmond to get to the bottom of that, you better not come back if you didn't have that figured out within 3, 4 weeks, maximum,
Mhm.
maximum. And that kind of urgency and diligence, you just don't see. You don't hear about it.
Mhm.
Nothing's, it takes forever to investigate routine cases.
Mhm.
So, that's the story or the state of things. So I don't know. I don't know I don't know how we're going to get around it in a hurry. It's going to take a while to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm talking about to hold people accountable. You
Yeah.
just never have that, and I used to say the only person in Washington that gets held accountable is the coach of the Washington football team. If they don't win or if they don't now, of course, they're doing well after 20 years. They're in the playoffs and they won their first playoff game. So that was one of my best lines, and I can't use that now, but because their current coach is doing very well.
Yeah. So just like I'm thinking about a word change. I remember when Barack Obama started his campaign and he mentioned the word change. And he did change the American fundamentally. But right now we need Trump more than ever to change it back to the normal American, to make American great again. So next week, we wish everything go very smoothly, and Trump will be our president. And we're proud to be the citizen of United States again. And we together we can make American great again. And I really appreciate Tom for your persistent to telling the truth, to stand up in the dark time, and I really appreciate our audience to stand with you, with us on for the final victory. So together we'll make American great again. We'll make the world great again.
Right,
Thank you
right.
so very much. Thank you. You're my hero, Tom.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well,
I'll
you're
see.
my hero for being on the air on all these issues all the time and speaking truth to power like you do and giving me a platform to talk about things that I may know something about. And I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I think we do have something in common, which is we do love our country so dearly.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I will see you next week, Tom.
Okay. See you then.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Okay.